We speak today of the shadow. We speak of the silence. We speak of the chapter numbered 666. To the unwashed masses of the Imperium, they are a myth. To the lords of the Administratum, they are a redacted file. But to the denizens of the warp, they are the anathema. They are the Grey Knights. They are the militant arm of the Holy Inquisition's Ordo Malleus, the Order of the Hammer, the Hunters of Demons. While the Adeptus Astartes of other chapters fight the alien and the heretic, the Grey Knights are forged for a singular, terrifying purpose: to combat the primordial annihilator, to stand before the entities of the warp that defy physics and sanity, and to banish them back to the hell from which they came. The Imperium is built upon a foundation of necessary lies. Officially, the demon does not exist. The citizens of the Hive Worlds are not taught of the Blood God in their scolums. The posters of the Holy Synods do not display the twisted visage of Belaker in the squares of Terra. To know the demon is to invite its corruption. Therefore, if the threat does not exist, neither can its destroyers. The secrecy of the Grey Knights is absolute. It is a silence bought with the blood of the faithful. Should a regiment of the Imperial Guard, loyal and brave, have the misfortune of witnessing the sons of Titan in battle, their reward is not a medal, but a summary execution. To witness the Grey Knights is to witness the truth of chaos, and the Imperium cannot allow such a contagion to spread. Even the Adeptus Astartes of other chapters, the angels of death themselves, are not trusted with this knowledge. Those who fight alongside the 666th chapter are seized after the battle, their minds scrubbed, their memories excised by psychic surgery, leaving only blank spaces where the glory of victory once stood. They are the ghosts in the machine of the Imperium. They are the last hope, and this is their story. Chapter 1. The Sigilite's Design. The genesis of the Grey Knights lies not in the 41st millennium, but in the ashes of the 31st. It begins at the very end of all things, the siege of Terra, as the traitor War Master Horus Lupercal tightened his grip around the throne world, and the skies of Terra burned with the fires of betrayal. The Emperor of Mankind looked into the future and saw only darkness. He realized, with a cold and terrible certainty, that military victory alone would not be enough. Even if Horus were slain, the thirsting gods of the warp would not vanish. Chaos would remain, a cancer gnawing at the heart of humanity, forever seeking to undo the Imperium. The legions of Astartes were broken. The Custodian Guard were bound to the palace, their golden armor tarnished by weeks of endless slaughter. A new weapon was needed, a weapon incorruptible, a weapon that could stand amidst the tides of the warp and not drown. And so, the Emperor summoned his closest confidant, the Regent of Terra, Malcador the Sigilite. He commanded Malcador to execute a final contingency. "Go," the Master of Mankind said, "and find me men who do not know fear. Find me men of such will that the warp cannot touch them." Malcador scoured the galaxy, even as it burned. He sought individuals of singular purpose, men who had stared into the abyss and not blinked. He returned with 12, for immortal lords, administrators of iron, who would lay the foundations of the Inquisition. But eight were Space Marines. These 8 Astartes were orphans of the heresy. They were drawn from the legions that had turned traitor and the legions that had stayed loyal. They were Black Shields, warriors who had cast aside their heraldry, renounced their fathers, and pledged their souls only to the Emperor. They were the survivors, and from their gene seed, purified and sanctified, the Brotherhood of the Grey Knights would be born. Chapter 2. The Knights Errant. Let us speak of the 8, the founders, the first Grandmasters. Their names are etched in silver upon the basalt walls of the Avenue of the Worthiest, though the Imperium has forgotten them. First, there was Epimetheus. In his former life, he was a son of the Lion, a dark angel of the First Legion. But he was more than a mere soldier. It is whispered that he was once known as the Nemean, a veteran of the dread Rangdan genocides of the Great Crusade. He bore the scars of those terrible wars upon his face, hiding his disfigurement beneath a heavy hood. While his brothers on Caliban fell to the whispers of Luther, Epimetheus remained true. He He led a war band of black shields known as the Dark Brotherhood, hunting the traitor and the alien with ruthless efficiency until the sigilite called him to a higher purpose. When he stood before the Emperor, he cast aside the name Nemean. He declared he had no name, for his past was dead. He became Epimetheus, the Grand Master of the Fifth Brotherhood, the Preservers. His destiny was a tragic one. After the heresy, he volunteered for the Long Watch on the world of Pythos, guarding the damnation cache in stasis for 10,000 years until the despoiler, Abaddon, awoke him. It is said he was taken by the arch-traitor, his fate unknown, but the Grey Knights do not surrender and Epimetheus fights on, even in chains. Second, there was Chiron. Born Felzerost, he was a librarian of the Night Lords, the 8th Legion. He was a Terran, born in the crushing dark of the Albia prison sinks. He was a man of nobility trapped in a legion of murderers. When his Primarch, Conrad Kurz, filled the legion with the scum of Nostromo, killers who murdered for sport rather than duty, Zeros stood apart. His loyalty was tested at the Council of Nicaea. When the edict banning psychic powers was passed, Zeros sought guidance from his first captain, Sevatar. But Sevatar, cold and indifferent, struck him down, mocking his hope. Zeros did not break. He fled into the shadows of Terra, hiding until Malkador's agents found him. To prove his worth, he was tasked with hunting his own brother, a sorcerer performing dark rituals on the world of Makar. Zeros executed the traitor, severing the last tie to his cursed bloodline. He became Chiron, Grand Master of the 8th Brotherhood, the Silverblades. Third, there was Koios, known in his life as Tylos Rubio, a codiceer of the Ultramarines. He was a stalwart warrior, a man of the Codex before it was written. When the Edict of Nicaea stripped him of his psychic hood, he obeyed, returning to the line as a battle brother. But on Kolth, when the word-bearers revealed their treachery, Rubio saw the warp manifest. He saw his brothers dying, and he made a choice. He broke his oath to the Council to keep his oath to the Emperor. He unleashed his power to save his kin, and in doing so, exiled himself. Recruited by Nathaniel Garo, he fought across the galaxy as a knight-errant. On Terra, Malkador offered him a new purpose. He became Koios, a founder of the Order, wielding his psychic might not as a tool, but as a weapon of absolute purity. Fourth, there was Ogun. His identity is lost to the mists of time, a secret within a secret. Some records suggest he was Balsar Kurthuri of the Raven Guard, a librarian who begged his Primarch Coryx to spare him the executioner's blade so he might serve the Emperor in death. Others claim he was Anekon Shivan, another son of Coryx who hunted the shards of Magnus. Whoever he was, he brought the stealth and patience of the 19th Legion to the Grey Knights, teaching them that the deadliest strike is the one that is never seen. Fifth, there was Satyr, known as Vardis Ison, a librarian of the Blood Angels. He was a man consumed by a cold fury, hating his own legion and, it is rumored, even his Primarch Sanguinius. He was a weapon waiting for a hand to wield it. Malkador found him, harnessed his rage, and directed it at the demonic. As Satyr, he became a Grand Master, his burning hatred refined into a cold, cleansing flame. Sixth, there was Iapto, once Severian of the Luna Wolves, a wolf of the moon. He possessed a natural gift, an innate suppression of his psychic presence that allowed him to move unseen even by the most powerful sorcerers. He was a member of the Crusader host on Terra, imprisoned when Horus turned. He escaped, fought a guerrilla war against the traitors, and eventually joined the Sigilite. He brought the ferocity of the 16th Legion, stripped of its ambition and tempered with loyalty, to the founding of the 666th chapter. Seventh, there was Jotun, Fyodor Stromgren of the Space Wolves, a rune priest of Fenris. His fate was a cruel one. Assigned to watch the Night Haunter, Conrad Kurz, he was captured and tortured, his body mutilated beyond recognition. But his spirit did not break. Malkador recovered his broken form and, using the forbidden bioalchemy of the dark age of technology, rebuilt him, not as a dreadnought, but as a warrior reborn. As Jotun, He brought the savage, elemental power of the storm to the Grey Knights. And finally, the eighth, the Supreme Grandmaster, Janus. His story is the most singular of all. He was Revuel Arvida of the Thousand Suns, a loyalist of the 15 Legion who refused the sorcery of Magnus. He guided the White Scars to Terra through the webway, but in doing so, succumbed to the flesh change, the genetic curse of his line. As his body twisted into a spawn, Malcador undertook a desperate ritual. He took a shard of the soul of Magnus the Red, a shard that contained the Primarch's nobility, his loyalty, and his immense psychic potential, and fused it with Arvida. The result was Janus, a being of immense power, possessing the strength of a Primarch and the soul of a loyal son. In Janus, the dream of what Magnus could have been lived on. He was the first, the Master of Titan, the Guardian of the Gate. Chapter 3, the Vanishing Moon. The Emperor granted these 8 warriors a fiefdom, the Moon of Titan, orbiting the gas giant Saturn. But Titan was not merely a base of operations. It was to be a crucible. As the armies of Horus laid siege to the solar system, Malcador the Sigilite performed his greatest act of sorcery. He wove a spell of such complexity that it strained his perpetual soul to the breaking point. He reached out with his mind and seized Titan, ripping it from the physical reality of the Imperium and sequestering it within the warp itself. Hidden in the belly of the beast, protected by macro-Geller fields and the psychic wards of the Sigilite, Titan vanished from history. To the eyes of the traitors, the moon was simply gone. But inside the warp, time is a fluid concept. While mere months passed in the material universe as the siege of Terra raged and the Emperor was interred upon the Golden Throne, decades, perhaps centuries, passed on Titan. In this pocket of accelerated time, the Fortress Monastery was built. The gene labs of Deimos, the Forge Moon moved to Titan's orbit, churned with industry. And the recruits, 1,000 psychically gifted aspirants gathered from across the galaxy, were trained. These aspirants were subjected to the 666 rituals of detestation. Their bodies were broken and rebuilt. Their minds were scoured of fear. But the greatest gift was the gene seed. Unlike other chapters who bear the genetic code of their Primarchs, the Grey Knights carry the Emperor's gift. It is said their gene seed is derived from the Emperor's own flesh, or perhaps stabilized by his own psychic resonance. It renders them incorruptible. In 10,000 years, not a single Grey Knight has ever fallen to chaos. When Titan finally returned to real space, the Horus heresy was over. The Emperor was silent. The Imperium was in ruins. But from the warp emerged a fully formed chapter of Astartes, clad in shimmering silver power armor, their souls burning with a light that was poison to demons. They were the Grey Knights, and their long war had just begun. Chapter 4, the Brotherhoods of the Anathema. The structure of the Grey Knights mirrors the Codex Astartes in form, but differs wildly in function. They are divided into 8 brotherhoods, each led by a Grand Master, and each fulfilling a specific tactical doctrine in the war against the Dark Gods. The first brotherhood, the Sword Bearers, led by Grand Master Vardan Kai. They're the masters of the armory. They maintain the chapter's war machines, the Land Raiders, the Storm Ravens, and the dread Nemesis Dread Knights. When a hammer must fall with mechanical fury, the first brotherhood answers. The second brotherhood, the Blades of Victory, commanded by Vorth Mordrak. They are the vanguard. They strike fast and true, often acting as the chapter's rapid response force. Mordrak also holds the title of Admiral of the Fleet, ensuring the Grey Knights strike cruisers dominate the void. The third brotherhood, the Wardmakers, once the brotherhood of Janus and Kaldor Drago, now led by Arvin Stern. They're the keepers of psychic lore. They foster the chapter's librarians, honing the raw psychic potential of the neophytes into a weapon that can sunder reality. The fourth brotherhood, the Prescient Brethren, under Grand Master Drosten Chrome, they're the eyes of the chapter. They guard the Augurium, with the prognosticators, powerful psychers too wounded for battle, scan the tides of the warp, predicting where the next demonic incursion will occur. They do not react to war. They are waiting for it before it begins. The fifth Brotherhood, the Preservers, led by Roth Morvain. They are the guardians of the chapter's future and its past. They oversee the Apothecarian and the Gene Seed stocks. Crucially, they are the keepers of the Dreadnoughts, the fallen heroes who sleep in sarcophagi until the call of war awakens them. The sixth Brotherhood, the Rapiers, the scalpel to the hammer. Commanded by Anvil Thawne, they disdain mass bombardment. They specialize in surgical strikes, teleporting directly into the heart of the enemy to sever the head of the beast. They are the highest expression of the Grey Knight's elite status. The seventh Brotherhood, the Exactors, the liaison to the Inquisition. Led by Coven Lur, they work hand in gauntlet with the Ordo Malleus. They often fight alongside requisitioned Imperial Guard regiments, bearing the terrible burden of knowing that their allies must be purged once the victory is won. The eighth Brotherhood, the Silverblades, the training ground. Grandmaster Aidan Perron oversees the recruitment and indoctrination of new knights. Every Grey Knight begins his journey here, mastering the blade and the bolter before finding his place in the other Brotherhoods. But there are those who stand apart even from the Brotherhoods. Deep beneath the fortress monastery, in the Chamber of Purity, dwell the Purifiers. They guard the most dangerous prison in the galaxy. Not a prison for men, but for artifacts. The blades, the tomes, the cursed relics of the Chaos Gods that cannot be destroyed, only contained. The Purifiers are souls of such absolute, blinding whiteness that they can stand in the presence of corruption and not blink. Their leader is Castellan Garin Crow. He wields the Black Blade of Antwer, a demon weapon that screams into his mind with every heartbeat, promising him the power to rule the galaxy. Crow's battle is not just physical. It is a second-by-second war of will. He does not use the sword's power. He fights only to keep it sheathed, using his own skill to slay his enemies while holding a literal god-killer in his hand. And above them all, the Paladins, the bodyguards of the Grandmasters. To become a Paladin is to pass 8 trials of impossible difficulty, to hunt the questing beast on the moon of Tethys without armor, to banish one of the 666 greater demons using only a sword and its true name. They are the heroes of heroes, the warriors who have looked into the eye of terror and spat in it. Chapter 5, the Armory of Titan. To fight the demon, one cannot use the weapons of mere mortals. The Grey Knights wield the Nemesis Force weapon. These are not simple power swords. They are psycho-conductive lattices of rare crystal and adamantium, forged in the secret foundries of the Moon Daimos. When a Grey Knight grips the hilt, the weapon attunes to his unique psychic signature. It becomes an extension of his mind. With a thought, the blade crackles with azure lightning. It does not just cut flesh. It severs the demon's connection to the warp, banishing its essence into oblivion. They wear the Aegis Terminator armor. Within the ceramite plates lies a network of filament grids that conduct the wearer's psychic power, creating a bubble of reality that the warp cannot breach. It is armor for the soul as much as the body. And for those threats that tower over the battlefield, there is the Nemesis Dreadnought, a controversial marvel of the dark age of technology. It is an exoskeleton that allows a single Grey Knight to stand toe-to-toe with a greater demon. The pilot does not drive it. He wears it linked via neural shunts, his psychic might amplified to titanic proportions. Chapter 6, the Fortress of the Lost Moon. To understand the Grey Knights, one must understand their home. They do not dwell on a world of green fields or bustling cities. They dwell in the shadow of Mount Anarch on the moon of Titan. Titan is a hostile, unforgiving rock. It is surrounded by oceans of liquid methane and jagged shards of ice. The air itself is lethal to the unaugmented. But here, hidden from the prying eyes of the galaxy, stands the Fortress Monastery. It is a bastion of basalt and adamantium, a citadel that houses not only the warriors of the chapter, but a legion of servitors and scribes dedicated to the eternal war. The monastery is a labyrinth of secrets. At its highest peak stands the Augurium, a black spire piercing the toxic sky. Here, The prognosticators, psychers of immense power, conduct their ceaseless rituals. They do not look at the stars, they look into the warp. They sense the smallest tremors in the Imperium to predict where the demonic incursions will occur. Because of their vigil, the Grey Knights do not merely react. They arrive before the enemy has fully manifested. Deep within the fortress lie the halls of champions. It is a place of silent glory, lined with the stone statues of heroes past, grand masters and brother captains who held the line against the darkness. Trophies of war hang from the vaulted ceilings, weapons taken from the hands of slain demons, sanctified and bound so they can do no harm. But there are places on Titan where even the brave do not tread. The chambers of purity are forbidden to all but the Grand Masters. Here, the chapter stores artifacts so dangerous, so steeped in corruption, that their mere presence would taint a lesser soul. Only the psychic will of the purifiers keeps the entities within these prisons at bay. It is whispered in the Iron Grimoire, a book written in the blood of saints, that an ancient evil lies buried beneath Mount Anarch itself, a darkness that was there before the Emperor arrived, now guarded eternally by the purifiers. Among these dark treasures is the charred skull of the demon Rajanalu. This creature once brought ruin to the city of Yulib, but now its spirit is trapped within its own bone, kept in check by the ceaseless chanting of 3 acolytes who maintain the psychic cage. For hundreds of years, the demon has watched the Grey Knights from its prison, screaming in a silence only psychiers can hear. Chapter 7. The Sanctum Sanctorum and the Final Secret. At the heart of the fortress lies the Sanctum Sanctorum. It is the holiest of holies, a repository of knowledge that predates the Imperium. Within its adamantium walls lies the original Liber Daemonica, the sacred text containing every rite of banishment and every true name of the demonic hosts encountered by the chapter over 10,000 years. A vast library of warped volumes and data crystals is tended by lobotomized servitors, whose minds are wiped daily to prevent the lore from driving them mad. This library is guarded by 3 great doors. The first is sealed by a cipher lock of infinite complexity. The second is protected by a spatial displacement field from the dark age of technology. No matter how fast you run toward it, you will always end up where you started. The third is a vortex, a psychic trap that will rip the soul from any being who attempts to pass without the correct words of power. Inside, the Grey Knights keep their most desperate weapon, the Tesseract Labyrinths. These are intricate cubes of Necron origin, perfect prisons capable of trapping a being of pure energy. When a demon is killed by a blade, it returns to the warp to reform. But if it is trapped in a Tesseract, it is imprisoned forever, denied its rebirth. The Grey Knights possess thousands of these cubes, but the secret of their creation is lost. They are a dwindling resource, and once they are gone forever. But the deepest secret of Titan is not a weapon of war. It is a simple wooden casket adorned with a golden seal. It is known as the Terminus Decree. Only the Supreme Grand Master knows of its existence. It is an artifact of last resort, to be opened only when all hope is lost, when the enemies of mankind are at the gates of Terra and the end times have come. There are whispers of what lies within. Some believe it contains a command to shut down the Golden Throne, allowing the Emperor to finally die and be reborn as a god. Others fear a darker truth. Legends speak of the ancient geneticist Basilio Fo, a madman from the Age of Strife, who claimed he could create a virus to kill every space marine and pre-march. Is the Terminus Decree the ultimate sanction? A weapon to purge the galaxy of the Emperor's own creations to save humanity from the warp? No one knows, and the Grey Knights pray they never have to find out. Chapter 8. The Wanderer in the Warp. No chronicle of the Grey Knights is complete without the saga of Kaldor Drago, the supreme Grandmaster who walks where gods fear to tread. Drago was the supreme Grandmaster before the Great Rift tore the galaxy apart. His legend was forged in fire on the world of Cornevin, where he faced the demon pre-March Mortarion. The battle was desperate. Drago, the last man standing, was seized by the Lord of Death. But as mortar ion crushed him, Drago did not yield. He summoned psychic fire, turning the Primarch's own arrogance against him. With a roar that shook the heavens, Drago carved the name of his predecessor, Geronton, onto Mortarian's rotting heart. The humiliation shattered the demon Primarch's form, banishing him to the Imperium. But victory came with a curse. The demon Prince Mkar, whom Drago had defeated in the past, dragged the Grand Master into the warp as he was banished. Drago was pulled from reality, doomed to wander the realm of chaos for eternity. Yet, Drago refused to break. His mind, tempered by the Emperor's gift, was impervious to the madness of the warp. He became a legend in the realm of nightmares. He climbed the bloodfalls of Khorne and slew the bloodthirster Karvoth, forging a new nemesis sword from the demon's great axe. He set fire to the plagued gardens of Nurgle, leaving the scent of burning rot in the winds of chaos. He walked through the palace of Slaanesh, resisting temptations of infinite glory and desire. He navigated the crystal maze of Tsench and slew the Lord of Change Mkachin. He is the eternal warrior. Occasionally, through ripples in the warp, he returns to reality to aid his brothers in their darkest hour. But he can never stay. The warp always reclaims him. He is a ghost, a guardian angel who fights a war that can never be won, yet refuses to lose. Chapter 9, Wars of Shame and Silence. The Grey Knights fight battles that no one will ever remember, to save billions who will never know they were in danger. There was the first war for Armageddon, when the demon Primarch Ongron descended upon the Hive world with his World Eaters. The Grey Knights deployed in force. 109 Terminators teleported into the teeth of the storm. The cost was catastrophic. Only 19 survived, but they succeeded. Brother Captain Termar Aurelian sacrificed his life to banish the Red Angel, while the young knight Hyperion shattered Angron's black blade with his psychic might. But the victory was tainted. The Inquisition, adhering to their protocol of absolute secrecy, ordered the sterilization and execution of the entire population of Armageddon, as well as the Imperial Guard regiments who had fought bravely beside them. They could not allow witnesses to the demonic Primarch to live. This led to the months of shame. The Space Wolves, led by the great wolf Logan Grimner, stood against the Inquisition to save the people they had protected. The Grey Knights, bound by duty, were forced to fire upon their cousin Astartes. It was a war of brothers, ending only when Grimner slew the Lord Inquisitor Kisnaros and the legendary Bjorn the Fell-Handed awakened to mediate the peace. The Grey Knights do not revel in such slaughter. On the planet Antax, when the Changeling of Tsench instigated a civil war to summon demons, Grandmaster Arvin Stern realized the demon was hiding among refugees fleeing the planet. To stop the Changeling from escaping and infecting other worlds, the Grey Knights destroyed the refugee shuttles. They killed hundreds of thousands to save billions. It is a calculus of blood that weighs heavy on their souls. On Harvard 3, a foolish governor staged a festival executing 666 heretics, inadvertently summoning a golden army of Slaanesh. The Grey Knights descended into a carnival of madness. They fought through mazes of screaming flesh. To seal the warp rift, they did the unthinkable. They piled the corpses of the innocents atop the heretics, using the blood of the pure to clog the gate to hell. This is the burden of the 666th chapter. They are the heroes who must sometimes become monsters to save humanity from extinction. They are the hammer, and to a hammer, the entire galaxy is an anvil. Music swells to a final, triumphant, yet somber chord. From the frozen peaks of Titan to the nightmare realms of the warp, the Grey Knights stand vigil. They are the Emperor's final sanction. They gave up their names, their memories, and their humanity so that the Imperium might live one more day. We do not know their names. We will never see their faces, but we sleep soundly in the dark because they are out there, awake, holding back the night. Chapter 10, The Burden of Voldus. In the darkening days of the 41st millennium, new heroes must rise to shoulder the burden of the endless war. Among them is Grand Master Aldrich Voldus. Voldus was the warden of the Librarius, a psyker of terrifying potential. His ascension to leadership was born of tragedy on the world of Long Blessing. There, the Grey Knights faced the Lord of Change, Mkachin, the same archdemon that had plagued Kaldor Drago. In the heat of battle, the previous Grand Master, Valdar Oricon, was slain by the demon's crystalline magic. Voldus did not falter. With a roar of grief and fury, he unleashed the full might of his psychic potential. He struck with such force that the fabric of reality tore open, and he summoned Kaldor Drago himself from the warp to aid in the battle. Together, the two heroes banished the demon. Impressed by his power, Drago promoted Voldus on the spot, granting him the title of Grand Master. Since the opening of the Great Rift, the cicatrix male dictum, Voldus has taken the mantle of Supreme Grand Master in Drago's absence. He wields the Malleus Arjurum, a hammer forged by the blind Smith Gulliver, and leads the chapter through its darkest hour, fighting not just for victory, but for the survival of the Imperium itself. Chapter 11, The Immortal and the Prophecy. The Grey Knights are long-lived, but they are not immortal, except perhaps for one. Justicar Anvil Thawne of the Order of Purifiers is a mystery even to his brothers. On a dead Eldar craft world, Thawne fell in battle against the Keeper of Secrets and Kari. The demon's blade pierced his chest, ending his life. His body was recovered and returned to Titan for burial with full honors. But as the rites of remembrance were spoken, a sound was heard from within the sarcophagus. Screaming, knocking. The brothers unsealed the tomb to find Anvil Thawne alive, his wounds knit together, his soul intact. He was subjected to years of interrogation and torture by the Inquisition to ensure he was not possessed, but he was found pure. He is one of the Perpetuals, a being who cannot truly die. There's a prophecy in the Iron Grimoire about a warrior eternal. It says he will be the last to fall, standing at the foot of the Golden Throne in the final battle, the last guardian between the Emperor and the encroaching dark. Many believe Thawne is this warrior. Chapter 12, The Lost Brotherhood. The warp is treacherous, not just in its demons, but in its very nature. Time holds no dominion there. In the 34th millennium, Brother Captain Eden led units of the Second Brotherhood into the warp to hunt a demon. Communication was lost. They were presumed dead. 2,000 years later, they returned. To the Imperium, millennia had passed. To the Lost Brotherhood, it had been mere moments of battle. They had fought an endless war at the foot of a demonic fortress, dying and resurrecting through sheer psychic will until the enemy was vanquished. But the warp demands a toll. Upon returning to real space, the flow of time crashed down upon them. They began to age rapidly, their bodies withering into dust in seconds. Captain Eden managed to transmit a single, encoded signal to Titan before the end. It serves as a grim reminder. In the war against chaos, even victory can taste like ash. Chapter 13, The Harvest of Souls. Where do these Godslayers come from? Recruiters for the Grey Knights scour the galaxy in black ships, visiting the most primitive and savage worlds where life is a daily struggle for survival. They seek young men with the gift of the psyker and the resilience of iron. Sometimes they receive aid from the Exorcist chapter, a mysterious successor known as the Second Grey Knights to the uninformed. But the truth is, there is only one Chapter 666. The trials are lethal. The halls of bioengineering and psychosurgery are places of horror where novitiates are broken down and rebuilt. 99% of aspirants die before they ever wear the silver armor. But those who survive, they become the Aegis. They become the anathema, the terminus. The Grey Knights stand ready. In the chamber of the fallen dagger, neophytes train with lethal grace. In the fields of the dead, the fallen heroes sleep in illuminated crypts. In the warp nexus, the scribes chant to keep Titan hidden. They are the 666th chapter. They are the hammer that strikes in the dark. They're the secret that keeps the Imperium from unraveling. And if the day comes when the Golden Throne fails, When the Astronomicon goes dark and the demons beat down the doors of the Imperial Palace, the Grey Knights will be there. They will open the Terminus Decree, and they will fight until the last star burns out. For the Emperor, for the Imperium, for the secret war that never ends.